What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Okay, so we're just about a week away from the premiere at South by Southwest Festival of Dan Farah's The Age of Disclosure documentary. This documentary has been the buzz for at least 3 to 4 to 6 months. People have been talking about it like it's a real game changer. We have Commander David Fravor and Ryan Graves from the Navy talking about this on Ryan Graves's Merged podcast. And then we got the trailer. Here it is.
The American people are ready to receive the truth.
Humanity is not the only intelligence in the universe.
Humanity is not the only intelligent species.
We are absolutely not alone.
Non-human intelligence exists.
UAPs are real, they're here, and they're not human. I spent 25 years as a senior official with the CIA.
I've worked on highly classified UAP programs.
28 years as an astrophysicist.
I served as the 4th Director of National Intelligence.
Director of Aviation Security in the National Security Council.
A one-star admiral after 32 years of service.
People that come forward with this, I feel like they've taken their life in their own hands.
I was recruited to a highly sensitive government program that investigated unidentified aerial phenomenon.
For over 16 years, on behalf of the U.S. government, I worked as a senior intelligence official on the unidentified aerial phenomenon topic.
We learned that the U.S. government was involved in a long-running secret war with other nations to collect and reverse engineer vehicles not made by humans.
I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings.
So look at that thing. It's rotating. There's a whole fleet of them.
The first country that cracks the code on this technology will be the leader for years to come.
China has established its own version of a UAP task force.
You think for a second that they wouldn't consider using it to achieve their ends of domination?
This is similar to the Manhattan Project. This is the atomic weapon on steroids.
This is so secret. Very, very few people in our entire government have been allowed access to it.
Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis, but that begins to ramp out of control.
It's not acceptable to have secret parts of government that no one ever sees.
You better be careful about a government that doesn't trust its people, because there's no telling what they'll pull on you.
This is the biggest discovery in human history.
You had information being locked away that could change the trajectory for species.
It has so many beneficial impacts, including clean energy.
We should have disclosure today. We should have disclosure tomorrow. The time has come.
What else you want to know?
So now, just about a week away from the premiere that is going to happen in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest, we got an article from The Hollywood Reporter, and I'm going to read it to you guys so you guys can follow along with me. Groundbreaking UFO documentary director breaks silence on film's revelations. Filmmaker Dan Farah discusses his UFO/UAP documentary, The Age of Disclosure, which premieres at South by Southwest this weekend. And I quote, "None of the government leadership I spoke to are debating whether this is real," unquote. Here it is. This is written by James Hibbert for The Hollywood Reporter. The highly anticipated UFO documentary, The Age of Disclosure, has its world premiere at South by Southwest Film Festival on Sunday, and filmmaker Dan Farah is finally ready to talk about his years-long secreted effort to make the most credible nonfiction movie ever about the buzzy topic. What makes The Age of Disclosure stand out among the thousands of previous UFO film and TV documentary efforts over the last several decades is that Farah only included on-record interviews with current and former senior members of the U.S. government, military, and intelligence community with direct knowledge of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs. The result is a riveting look at a subject that has been taken far more seriously in recent years, as high-level officials make statements, release videos, hold hearings, and take legislative action, like 2023's Bipartisan UAP Disclosure Act, which all lead to one conclusion: something is going on. In the age of disclosure, that something is boldly defined at the start of the film by several of its 34 interview subjects: that non-human intelligent life exists, that they've been visiting our planet for a long time, that the United States entered into an arms race with foreign adversaries to reverse engineer technology from crashed aircraft, and that if certain factions of our government continue to keep this information secret and sequestered, that the United States could face an intelligence failure like the one that led to 9/11, or even worse. From there, disclosure spins a depth narrative that details an alleged 80-year cover-up of UFOs while attempting to answer several burning questions, such as how the crafts work, why have they crashed, who is covering this up, and what do U.S. presidents know. This one is interesting, though. Why does he mention U.S. presidents? The film will doubtlessly cover many skeptics while also generating some skepticism of its own. And I quote, "I hope I made a film that makes the public aware of a very serious situation that it impacts us all," Farah says. "I had multiple senators tell me that they thought my documentary would be one of the most effective tools for helping make the public aware of the truth in a way that could get the rest of the government to take this topic more seriously." Farah also hopes for more traditional metrics of filmmaking success. With his team currently on the hunt for a distributor, the movie's trailer hit 18 million viewers across all platforms, half of which were international. And I quote, "There's a universal audience that has been invested in the topic, and it's been growing since the 1940s, says Farah, who points out that the UFO forum on Reddit has even more subscribers as the ones for Harry Potter and Marvel. Below, Farah took our questions. The director is passionate about this subject and also exceedingly careful in selecting his words, which is understandable. Having your debut film premiere at a major film festival is cause for anxiety enough. To also have it also be a project which claims to answer one of mankind's biggest existential questions while tackling sensitive national security issues is quite another. As a first-time director, Farah has jumped straight into the deep end of the pool, which might also contain aliens. Question number 1. How were you able to convince so many of credentialed voices to go on camera to talk about this for your first film? Farah answers, "I was researching this topic a few years ago, and I met several very senior former intelligence officials through a friend of mine who I will keep as an anonymous source. It started with former Department of Defense official Luis Elizondo and former director of U.S. government's UAP task force, Jay Stratton, who were really key in opening doors for me. I told them I wanted to make the most serious and credible and sober documentary ever made about this topic. My goal was to only interview people who had direct knowledge of the UAP topic, and as a result of their work for the U.S. government, and who would share what they can legally disclose. One by one, I would get introduced to another high-level person who had worked on this topic, and each would end up introducing me to someone else. I went down the rabbit hole, and what followed was the most revelatory and interesting experience of my life." Question number 2. What kind of reactions did you get from officials when you approached them? There was a consistent positive response to the goals that I had. From intelligence officials to senators to military officials, everyone felt it was important to bring this information to the public in a credible and serious fashion. They said that they had never presented with an opportunity like this, There was also strength in numbers. By participating in a documentary that interviewed so many credible people, it gave them all cover, essentially, so they didn't have to go out on a limb by themselves to share this information. Question number 3. Your film actually reminded me a bit of another documentary, Al Gore's climate change film, An Inconvenient Truth. Farah responds, there is some overlap in that global warming was also a topic that was considered pseudoscience in French, and there was a stigma around scientists talking about it. Then An Inconvenient Truth had credible people bringing attention to a very real and serious situation that has global stakes. It's the same thing here, but arguably with higher stakes. Frankly, because there's potential existential threats on multiple fronts. There's what humans could do with this technology if it's used for bad, and what the intentions are of non-human intelligence. Question number 4. Were you nervous about making this? Did you take any secretive steps when filming? Farah responds, there are people who want the topic to continue to be kept from the public entirely. So I went to great lengths to make this documentary in secret over the last 2.5 years. I kept it very under the radar, and everyone working on it was under NDAs. And not everyone I talked to ended up being on the film. There were a number of government and intelligence officials who ultimately decided it wasn't in their best interest to participate. I wonder who that was. Certain officials were afraid of the historical stigma around the topic and how it might impact their reputation. Several officials ultimately decided they would be in danger if they participated in this documentary, even sharing what they legally could. And that's not a position I would ever want anyone to be in. Also, at no point did I ever ask anyone to share classified information. I would never do that. But what is interesting is that there was a huge amount of fascinating information that could be lawfully disclosed that historically people were just discouraged from talking about. Question number 5, were any of your sources threatened for their participation? Answered, yes. Some of them were told very clearly there will be consequences for them, that they would be in danger if they participated not only in my documentary, but any documentary. But while my interview subjects want to see the truth be brought to the public, they also 100% agreed that there are a lot of elements of this topic that should remain classified and should never be made public because it's in the best interest of national security. Now that I've learned about the landscape, I agree with that. But there are these fundamental facts, like that we're not alone in the universe, that everyone feels like the public has a right to know. And it's also in our best interest to make it known that there is no longer this antiquated, unjust stigma that is making our country fall behind, and how serious this topic is taken. Question number 6, I think. The hypothetical counter argument that I can think of is once you let the cat out of the bag, the question and the media interest will be insatiable. It won't stop, and everybody will just keep digging until they strike something they definitely don't want out there. The answer. Luis Elizondo has a really interesting line in the documentary about how it's ironic that people who created the stigma to cover this up, labeling anybody who talked about it wacky and nuts, unintentionally ended up creating a new national security threat, which is the stigma itself, because the stigma is not as strong in other countries, and we're competing with those countries. So how can we as a nation, our scientific community, our academia community, how can our communities contribute towards the United States succeeding on this front when 90% of them don't even think it's real? That's a good point. There's a scene in the documentary that I find especially impactful, where Secretary of State Marco Rubio talks about how a lack of imagination has historically led to all of the greatest intelligence failures and disasters, from Pearl Harbor to 9/11, and that he doesn't want it to happen again. He says in the film, and I quote, "We've had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours, and we don't know whose it is. That alone deserves inquiry, deserves attention, deserves focus. Prior to 9/11, we didn't put enough money towards counterterrorism, and our intelligence agencies didn't share enough information. Everyone looked back and said, we could have done this better. My interview subjects points out that we're now in a situation where that stigma around UAPs is creating hurdles for us to appropriately address the issue with a whole government approach. There is not the appropriate amount of funding going towards this, and there is not the appropriate amount of oversight. Next question. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer pressured Trump last month to release UFO files after the president pledged to release the JFK files. I've never gotten the impression that Trump seems all that excited to do that. Kind of dances around the subject, which is interesting because that's how all the living past presidents seem to react when asked about the subject. Like they don't outright deny there's something there, but they keep their reaction light and bounce it away. Well, that's the answer. Schumer has very aggressively fought for disclosure on the UAP topic. Most people don't know that for the last 2 years in a row, Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds co-sponsored the UAP Disclosure Act, which then Senator Marco Rubio and Senator Kristen Gillibrand also endorsed. The act had very specific language to try to use the law to bring about disclosure. Schumer literally included a quote saying, "The American public has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena." This is a very specific language. When you read that, any average person would say to themselves, oh my God, is this real? Yes, it is real. Something else that I found eye-opening is how truly bipartisan this topic at a time where Democrats and Republicans don't agree on anything. The leadership of both parties are completely aligned on how serious this is. None of the government leadership I spoke to who have access to very sensitive classified information were debating whether this is real. None of them. I had multiple senators tell me that they thought my documentary would be one of the most effective tools for helping make the public aware of the truth in a way that could help them get the government to take the topic more seriously. Next question. Are there any common elements of UFO like abductions, ancient aliens, Area 51, Skinwalker Ranch that some UFO believers have long believed, but that your research has suggested are not true? Like, is there anything the UFO crowd is wrong about? Nothing really stands out to me, but I would go the other way with it, which is a very senior former official in the film goes on record to confirm there has been ongoing UAP activity over some of our most sensitive military sites, especially in the Western United States. He specifically notes that includes Area 51. That's an important moment for me because Area 51 is a talking point that I think your average person thinks it's all conspiracy, that nothing real happens regarding UAP in that area. This person makes it very, very clear that it's not the case. Last question. What happens next on this front, do you think? I think we are on a path to the basic facts actually being made known to the public in the near future. The current leadership in both political parties, as well as elements in the current administration, want to take cautious steps towards responsibly disclosing the fundamental facts about UAP and non-human intelligent life to the public. A lot of government leaders can't dictate change on their own. They still need the populace and the rest of the government to come around to it. A documentary can be very helpful to achieving that goal in theory. Okay, so that was a long one. I'm sorry, but I think it's very important to hear what Dan has to say. He has been one of the most secretive figures in ufology over the last 7-8 years. His hands have been inside a lot of pies. He has the rights for the Secret Machines books. He was involved in Lou Elizondo's Imminent book. He's directly involved in Jay Stratton's upcoming book. He's involved in this. He has worked with Steven Spielberg in the past. We know that Steven Spielberg's Disclosure movie is coming out on June 2026. We don't know if Dan Farah is involved in that, but it wouldn't be crazy to think that if Steven Spielberg adds this little note at the beginning that says based on real events. It's not crazy to think that he could take some of these testimonies and add them to the movie. When he mentioned presidents, that was interesting to me because there are rumors that a former president is going to be part of this documentary. I don't think they're real. I don't think it's true. But if it is, things are going to get really, really crazy. I also think that amongst the people that didn't appear on the trailer, we could get some really interesting names. Maybe James Lakatsky, maybe Colm Kelleher, maybe David Grush is going to make an appearance too. We don't know. But it was confirmed that there are still a bunch of people that didn't appear on the trailer that are part of the documentary. So I really can't wait. As far as the rollout is concerned, we still don't know the specifics of it. We just know that the film is going to premiere at South by Southwest, and we are going to get some news about the rollout, international and national, maybe this week or just the week after the release. But be on the lookout for that. I want you guys to let me know what you think about this article on the Hollywood Reporter. I think it's a big one. I think we needed to hear from Dan Farah, and I'm glad he finally spoke. And I want you guys to let me know, what are you expecting from this documentary? Do you think it's going to be as game-changing as people are laying it out to be? Or do you think it's not going to move the needle at all? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll be reading and responding to as many as I can. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to please like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified when a new video drops. If you want to support the channel in any other way, I'm going to leave a few links in the description, so take your pick. You can also become a member on our members channel, and you can support us on the KGRA website. All the interviews I did are there. Thank you for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Check out this patch that I have. Where do you guys want me to put it? Do you guys want to leave as well if the aliens come? Remember to stay curious, people. Bye.